came about quite naturally. I first approached my friend Juliet with ideas concerning a bird art exhibition several years ago. She was then president of the local chapter, an avid birder, and a museum member. I knew she would enthusiastically present informative programs about birds and the environment, and that the Audubon Society would be a valuable partner.
Prior to my role as president, I was education chair of the Northwest Illinois Audubon Society. I focused primarily on doing bird programs for children at the Freeport Public Library. I would read nature books to the kids and show them bird specimens. We wanted to keep the connection with the library by donating binoculars and bird guides to the library. This happened right before the pandemic, but we learned that they have been checked out quite frequently. Our chapter also desired to become more inclusive and deepen our existing educational goals by providing more opportunities to do outdoor programming with the broader Freeport community. We wanted to donate binoculars to the Boys and Girls Club and start a recurring bird program at the center. Then Barry approached the chapter about the Birds and Art exhibition. The Freeport Art Museum already had a long-standing relationship with the Boys and Girls Club, so our ideas started to merge well. This afternoon, we were thrilled to have Christian Cooper present during the donation of the binoculars and the teens to talk about the joys of birding. This month, our chapter is also celebrating our 50th year as a chapter, and we are very happy to tie this milestone with the Art Museum's bird exhibition to bring enjoyment and awareness of birds to the community.
Two featured exhibitions at FAM include an invitational of 25 Illinois artists titled For the Birds, and Suffragette Conference of the Birds after Fareed Attar by Alice Hargrave. These explore the bird as a messenger of warning, an amazing biological wonder, and a creature full of symbolism. On May 25th of 2020, we sadly became aware that even during the joyful experience of bird watching, people of color can encounter the ugliness of racism. While enjoying the incredible beauty and diversity of birds, we still struggle to embrace diversity among our own species. Reflecting on all that happened this past year, it would be unconscionable to install a bird art exhibition without addressing the racism that people of color can encounter. As part of an arts organization exploring ways to engender more significant equity, diversity, and inclusivity through systemic change, we must speak and act on these issues. Therefore, I'm pleased to announce tonight that this October, under the umbrella of our new Black, Indigenous, People of Color initiative, we will launch the first of 5 solo years of 5 solo, we will launch the first of 5 years of solo shows where artists of color select artists of color for the museum's central galleries. More information on this will come later. Though I do want to note at this time, the first 2 artists are Patrick Earl Hammy, Professor of Art at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, and Tiana J. Bowie, an Assistant Professor and Section Chair of Printmaking at the College for Creative Studies in Detroit. 2 significant contemporary artists that Freeport will be proud to show in our museum. Christian Cooper is a writer and board member of the New York City Audubon. His encounter in Central Park, his statements afterward distinguish him as someone important to hear. That moment embodied his identities as a birder, activist, and human being. These same issues that get press in larger cities are part of the national conversation across this nation in small towns such as Freeport. We will greatly benefit from hearing his voice. I first approached Christian to be part of our programming in a Zoom format only due to the pandemic. However, Christian persisted in his desire to, if at all possible, make this an in-person event. He wanted to meet with the kids and teens face to face to share his enthusiasm for birding. This desire speaks to his passion for birding and for engaging directly with the issues he cares about. Thank you so much, Christian, for being here. I would like at this time to recognize the collaborating organizations in this event and other programs related to the current exhibitions. The Northwest Illinois Audubon Society, the Boys and Girls Club of Stephenson County, CURE, Citizens United for Respect, Rights, and Equity, the Winneshiek Playhouse and Actors for their Monday monologues, the Freeport Public Library for its bird-related children's stories and activities, and 9 East and Higher Grounds coffee shops for exhibiting the Freeport Camera Club's bird photography. Thank you all. And a special thank you goes out to a dear friend of Christian's and mine, Giselle, on the beautiful Isle of Tobago, who helped make this connection work. Thank you, Giselle.
We also want to thank the National Audubon Society for awarding our chapter an Audubon in Action grant to help support this program to bring Christian Cooper to Freeport and in the donations of the binoculars and bird guides. Thank you as well to Troy Peters and Isabella Grabelna from the Great Lakes Audubon for coordinating the streaming of this event, and to Highland Community College for technical support. Many thanks to all. I will now introduce Jennifer Johnson, Great Lakes Audubon, from Great Lakes Audubon, who will facilitate our program tonight, Christian Cooper in Conversation, celebrating the diversity of birds and people.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? All right. My name's Jennifer Johnson, but I go by Jen, and I work at Audubon Great Lakes. Audubon Great Lakes is the Midwest region's regional office of the National Audubon Society. And my office covers 4 offices and nature centers, 56 chapters, and it has over 200,000 members under its wing. And I work as an associate under the Wild Indigo Nature Explorations Program. Wild Indigo is a community engagement program that was made to connect BIPOC communities to their local natural spaces. Wild Indigo currently operates across the Midwest in the following cities: Chicago, Waukegan, Milwaukee, Detroit, and Gary, Indiana. And I'm so happy to facilitate tonight's discussion and to introduce Christian Cooper, our guest tonight. Christian Cooper is a writer and board member of the New York City Audubon. And after a video of a racist confrontation while he was birding in Central Park went viral, he drew on that experience to author the Black Lives Matter comic, It's a Bird, for DC Comics. And that continued his decades-long activism on behalf of racial justice, LGBTQ equality, and expanding democratic access in American society. So please join me to welcome Christian, who will tell his story from birding to activism, following an interview-style conversation with me, and after which we will open up the floor for audience questions. So thank you for joining us tonight, Christian.
Totally my pleasure, Jen. Thank you. I have to say thank you to Freeport for making me feel so welcome and showing me such a great time. Since I've been here, I went to the Lido to see a movie, The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, which was amusing. And we hit Union Dairy, did I get that right? Which apparently is over 100 years old, and sucked down chocolate shake which will erase my waistline, but it was worth it because it was delicious. And it's just been a very welcoming visit so far. So I want to thank you guys for all having me. And I want to second what Barry said about making sure you get to the museum to see the exhibits, particularly Alice Hargrave's exhibit, which there was one piece. Alice is here in the front row. Hi, Alice. And there was one piece in particular that I thought was just spectacular there. I'm not going to say which one it is. You can go for yourself and see if you zero in on the same piece that just completely absorbed me. And I said to Alice, I want this, and I want it bigger, and I want it on my wall. Yeah, I strongly encourage you to check out her work. So
Wonderful. I have to go see it myself. So I just want to know, how did you get into birding, Christian?
Some of you who maybe were on the bird walk this morning, or if you were listening in on me talking to the kids, may have heard this already, but I started very young when I was about 10 years old. For some reason, my parents thought it was very important that I be put in a woodworking class because of the complete lack of interest I had ever shown towards wood, hammers, or nails. So there I was in woodworking shop, and I had the choice of building a footstool or a bird feeder. So I picked the bird feeder. And after I built it, I put it up in the backyard. And these birds started coming, and one of them was a crow with red on the wings. And I was all excited because I had discovered a new species of crow. And then eventually, not long after that, I found out it was actually a red-winged blackbird. And that bird to this day remains one of my favorites. And for me, the sign of spring is when I hear the red-winged blackbird's cry. After it returns from its wintering grounds. So that's kind of like, that was the spark bird that got me started. That's actually a term we use in birding, is spark bird, the bird that triggered your interest in birding. But I had always grown up in a household where nature was very important, because my dad was a biology teacher, and he always made a point of getting us out into the national parks and taking us camping and all of that. So and one of the things he did was one summer, because both my mom and dad were teachers, they piled us into the camper over the summer because they had the summer off. And me, my sister, the family dog, the two of them in a little Volkswagen Westphalia camper that's the size of a van for 3 months going across the country and back. So, and there wasn't room for much. And there was a lot of hours of driving. So one of the few things in the car to read while we were driving was Peterson's Field Guide to the Birds that my dad had put in because he's a biology teacher. So I was flipping through that as we were going across the country. And finally we hit the West Coast. And this bird goes flying by at a rest stop. And I say, "Oh, look, Mom and Dad, there goes a black-billed magpie." And they look at me like, "How the hell does he know that?" It's because I memorized the book. So that's kind of how I got started.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you got an early start. I'm a little jealous.
Well, you know, it helps. It is never too late to start. It is never too late to start. And it brings so much joy into your life, and so much peace and calm into your life, to birding. I can't recommend it highly enough.
And so we got to hear a little bit about your childhood, and you got to be with some young folks today. And I want to know, like, what was it like meeting those children today? How did you feel?
Oh, fantastic. As Barry mentioned, you know, we were, because of the pandemic, like, okay, we're going to do this by Zoom. And I'm like, Zoom with kids. And so fortunately, the grip of the pandemic loosened enough that we could actually plan on doing this in person, because if you're going to show kids how to use binoculars, I want to take them on a bird walk. I want to, have direct interaction with them. That's the fun of being with kids. And they were really fun today. The younger ones were very enthusiastic. They usually are. And it was fun sort of prodding them. It's nice to sort of steer their minds in certain directions and get them thinking and questioning. And that was fun. And then with the older ones, we had some frank discussions about race and about being in public spaces, when you're Black and what that means, and questions of identity and being involved in birding.
And that actually is a great segue for the next question. How do you talk to a young person to explain your personal experience and how to handle it? And also, how do you handle birding while Black? What's your suggestion to those teens and those adults? What did you tell them today?
Well, today I told them that, and I will say this till I'm blue in the face, that the birds belong to no one, but they are for everyone to enjoy. Everyone. And it pains me that for a long time there have been so few Black birders, because you don't know what you're missing. And I am thrilled, conversely, to see that our numbers are creeping up. For a long time, I used to joke, when I saw another black birder, oh, you're one of the other 5 in North America. Hey, hi, nice to see you. And then, the inevitably being confused for the other black birder in North America when you bump into someone who's like, oh, you're so-and-so. I'm like, no, I'm not. But it pains me that we don't see more of us out there. Even if it's not birding, out in the national parks, enjoying the outdoors. It is ours as much as it is anybody else's. And don't let anyone tell you otherwise, and don't let anyone dissuade you from being out there and enjoying it, because it is a magnificent experience. It is transformative, and especially in these times when our community, the Black community, has been through so much, and when American society as a whole and the entire world has been through so much trauma. It is incredibly healing to be out in nature and to lose yourself in something greater than yourself, something that transcends the little minutia of our lives and the woes that we may face, large and small, and instead to see something that has gone on for thousands of years, the great cycles of nature that continue, that enrich us, that empower us, and that can heal us. So, my advice to every Black person is get out there and enjoy it. It is yours.
That's a strong message. And I feel like even myself as a Black birder, I really resonate with that. So I just wanted to say that.
If I can add, for white people who are interested in conservation, it is your business to make sure that more Black and brown people out there put aside that it's the right thing to do. Forget that. It is the right thing to do, but forget that. Your self-interest says get Black and brown people out there. Why? If you care about nature, if you care about birds, you have to understand the country is changing. There's no way to stop it. The demographics are changing. It's changed in New York. It's changed in a lot of the cities. There are more Black and brown people. If we are not birding, if we are not engaged with nature, you're going to wake up one day and you're going to find that a whole generation has come up who doesn't care about it, who isn't interested in it. And then when you try to protect it, there will be no constituency there to force the politicians to pay attention and to do the right thing to protect the environment. I don't want that. I want to continue to be, when I'm 90 years old, I want to be able to continue to go out in Central Park and see 20 plus warblers in a single day. That's not going to happen if we don't protect the habitats, if we don't do something to protect the habitats in the wintering grounds, if we don't, make sure that pesticides aren't being used that are going to affect the birds. All these, there are so many pieces in the chain that we have to make sure are addressed. They cannot be addressed individually. They have to be addressed on a governmental level. And if there is no constituency of support for it, the government will do nothing. I don't think that's what any of us who are interested in conservation and protecting the birds want. So it is incumbent upon, forget that it's the right thing to do. Don't forget that, but put that aside for a moment. It is essential if you want the birds to survive. We've got to get all of us birding. It also makes for such a much nicer world. It is unbelievable the commonality that springs up. I can say this as a birder in Central Park, where we have every kind of person out there and nobody gives a damn. Because we're all, as long as someone is interested in the birds, as long as someone knows their birds or is eager to learn their birds, we're all in and we're all helping each other to learn, and it's a beautiful thing. And it goes beyond race, even to class. There was one point in Central Park when we had one of the richest people in the United States who would go on to become the United States Secretary of the Treasury, and a homeless woman. And they were both birding. The homeless woman had seen people out in Central Park birding, and she's like, what are these people looking at? She got interested. Someone gave her one of their old pair of binoculars, and she became a birder just like the rest of us. And nobody cared. The guy who's one of the richest guys in the country, if not the planet, I didn't even know that he had that much money. He was just another one of the birders. He was just Hank who birds. And that's all I knew until one day I read the paper and I'm like, oh, why is Hank's picture in the paper? And I'm like, oh, that's why Hank's picture is in the paper. Nobody cares. nobody cares. As long as you're interested in the birds, we're all in it.
And it's like birding can be a way to be an equalizer, bring a level playing field to all those that are outside and enjoy the birds. And that brings me to talking about birding. It's not so separate from activism for people of color either. Like that's something we can connect the birds and connect nature and connect to our own experiences as well.
Explain to me more what you mean by that.
Sure. So, some people like to separate issues of equality from conservation. And the more you talk, the more I'm hearing you definitely can't do that.
Right.
There's something you can use in tandem.
Well, there's a couple of levels to that too. For example, one of the things I've always been aware of in Central Park, because for a long time, I just had this I've never bought a pair of binoculars in my life. Every pair of binoculars I've had have either been a hand-me-down or a gift. And so until I got my most recent pair of binoculars, a 50th birthday gift from my dad. But before that, my pair of binoculars was this old battered black metal object that hung around my neck. And I was always very much aware of the fact that I was crawling around in the bushes with a black metal object in my hands. There were dozens of other people crawling around in the bushes with black metal objects in their hands. But if anybody was going to get shot for crawling around in the bushes with a black metal object in their hands, it wasn't going to be any of the white birders doing it. It was going to be me, because the perception would be different because of my brown skin of what that person was doing, crawling around in the bushes with a black metal object in their hands. And that was always in the back of my head when I was birding. So yes, there is that. And then there's also the question of racial justice, racial equity for the entire community, because so often, because of either class issues or race issues, it is the communities that are poor or that are black or that are brown that get the power, the power generator, power facility located in their neighborhood. So all those particulates are going into the air more densely in that neighborhood, and nobody has a higher rate of asthma than people in a poor black community. Sorry to say, but that's always the case, and it's not an accident. So these are things that we all have to think about and try to bring some more racial equity to it.
And speaking of safety outdoors, in your experience, like in Central Park, and even just as you stated as being a black birder outside, what's the suggestion you would say for organizations or just people in Freeport to help individuals feel safe in their community?
Well, for example, if you're Northwest Audubon, and you're trying to increase the number of black birders who come to your walks, you want to think through what that means. For example, you don't want to schedule your walks primarily on Sunday mornings. Why? Because I am not a churched person. I am a tree-hugging pagan, was raised without any sort of organized religion, so church is not my thing. But I know enough to know that in the black community, church is huge. So if you schedule your walks on a Sunday morning, you're not going to get a lot of black participation, because a lot of black folk will be in church on Sunday morning. So you have to take into sort of consideration that kind of thing. And the other thing you want to do is just be welcoming. If you are a white person who is in the organization, and I saw that today when I went out on a walk this morning over in I'm going to botch it. Someone help me here. Elkhorn, thank you. At Elkhorn Biological Diversity Preserve. And it was entirely white people, and they were all incredibly welcoming. That's good. That's what you want to do. When you see someone black who bothers to come out, you want to make sure they know they're welcome. And somebody did that to me when I was a kid. I went out with South Shore Audubon Society out on Long Island, which is where I grew up and where I first started birding. And it was entirely white folks, but the guy who was leading the walk was a Jewish guy named Elliot Kuttner. And he took one look at me with my fascination with the birds, and he made it his mission to make sure that that interest was nurtured. And so, you know, I always try to pass on what Elliot did for me. I try to pass it on to others as well. And that's one reason why I do a lot of work with kids back in New York City. And then, of course, I came here and did it today. But it's because, you know, you pass it forward. And, you know, of course, my main goal is to pass it forward to get more Black and brown kids doing it. But I don't care what color you are. You know, I want more kids doing it. That's our job, is to transmit that. And, you know, if I'm in a room full of mostly white kids, well, somewhere in the United States, there's a white guy in a room of mostly Black kids who's hopefully, you know, passing on his passions. And hopefully it's a passion for the environment and for birds. So, but those are the things you need to do. You need to think through, you know, okay, how am I going to make this more accessible to Black and brown people? What parts of my walks going to be in? How am I going to make sure people can get there? What days am I going to schedule it on? And then you also, once you have those walks, you want to make sure everyone knows that they're welcome.
And what would you say to the Black community to say, hey, you should go birding too? Like, how would you encourage them to get outside?
Go birding too. You know, I mean, it really, there is one barrier to entry, if you want to call it that, to birding, and that is the price of binoculars can be pretty high. Like I said, I have never bought a pair in my life. They've always been either hand-me-downs or gifts. They can be expensive, a good pair. So that is a barrier to entry. Don't let it stop you. You can bird without binoculars. It can be done. And then, you know, you save up your pennies, or there are ways to get binoculars from other folks, because people all the time are, you know, who have the means are replacing, you know, their old binoculars with a new pair, and they don't know what to do with them. And so there's a way to get those. There may actually be an organization that specializes in that. And if I had come prepared, I would be able to tell you exactly what that was. I have not. But there are ways. Don't let that one potential barrier of entry stop you. And also, one good thing to do on a day like tomorrow, when it's supposed to go up, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's supposed to go up into the 90s tomorrow. Hot days, the birds by the middle of the day are looking to cool off and drink. So you plant yourself near a water source. You don't need binoculars at that point. You can just sit there and wait for the birds to come to you, because they're hot, they're bothered, and they want to cool off. And that's when you're going to get some really great views of some hard to find birds without needing binoculars, because they're going to be coming to the water. So that's a good plan for a day like tomorrow when the temperature is going to soar.
Good tips. So what are your reflections on the Audubon name? In your experience, does the Audubon name present a barrier for people of color to even?
Next question.
Oh, okay, can do.
No, that is a thorny question. Oh Lord, is that a thorny question? For most people, they hear the word Audubon, and either they have no idea what it stands for, or they think, oh, that's those crazy bird people. You know, they don't associate it with the dark side of John James Audubon, which is that he was, I don't think he was a slave owner himself, but he was pro-slavery and sent people back to slavery who had escaped it, which just, when you read that story, it just makes your skin crawl. So, you know, it's not just in the question of, you know, what do we do with the name Audubon? It's what do we do with a lot of names in our society, you know, because so many, you know, are freighted with this history that may or may not be known. You know, one way to look at it is, well, you know, is this, how much does this weigh down the name? Is this significant in how we perceive the name? That's one way to look at it. Another way to look at it is, you know, well, look, then the name has to go. That's another way to look at it. Honestly, I don't know how I come down on that. I do know that there's a movement on right now to drop the personal names from many of the names of birds. For example, there's birds like the Wilson's warbler, McGillivrary's warbler, Cooper's hawk. That one gets to stay. But the problem with a lot of these names is, some of them were perfectly great people, and some of them were, have issues like Audubon. And then some of them, are sort of in this gray area, like, oh, well, is that really an issue? It's an issue in somebody's eyes, but it's not an issue in somebody else's eyes. There's a movement on, and I think it is a beautiful solution to just drop all the person names. Just get rid of them all, because there's no scientific reason for it. It doesn't tell you anything about the organism. We have red-bellied woodpeckers here in Illinois. It actually has a little, you don't often see it, but it actually has a little patch of red feathers on the belly. So that name tells you something about the bird. Wilson's warbler tells you nothing about the bird. So there's no reason to have that kind of name to go with the bird. So there's a movement on, and it's getting a lot of steam. I think it's only a matter of time, and gradually we're going to see all those person names drop out. And the beauty of that is it stops being subjective. We don't have to sit there like we're doing here with John James Audubon thinking, well, okay, how freighted is the Audubon name? What connotation does it have for people? Is that a yes or is that a no? You don't even have to think about it. You don't even have to, be subjective about it. All the person names go, and instead we give all the birds names that are descriptive, that are useful, that actually help you understand what the bird is. And that is gradually going to happen. I'm almost certain. There's been no official determination by the naming organizations, but the momentum is strong for this to happen over the next couple of years. And it'll be a little uncomfortable for those of us who have always known these birds by certain names, like, the Wilson's warbler. That's a name that a lot of people know. We'll get over it.
Well, that one was spicy. So we're going to end on a cooler note. So how can nature be a restorative experience?
Oh gosh, I think I've kind of laced that through the whole discussion, but I'll give you an example. On September 11th, I happened to be birding in Central Park that morning, on September 11th, 2001, which was unusual for me because I'm notorious in Central Park as the sign of spring, because I am a fair weather spring birder. Spring, you can find me in Central Park every single morning. But in the fall, maybe, almost never, 1 or 2 days in the fall. I happened to pick September 11th, 2001 as a day I would go birding that fall. And I was in the park and it was magnificent. It was one of those spectacular September days where, like we've had for the last couple of days, where the air is cool and dry and the winds have pushed the migrants in from the north. And so we were seeing tons of birds, and all of us birders were having a fantastic time. And then gradually we became aware that something had happened and we didn't know what. We weren't sure what. And we're like, you know what? We should get out of the park and find out what's going on. And we did, and it was like stepping from a tranquil, peaceful, idyllic place into a Japanese monster movie. And I say that because if you've ever seen those Godzilla movies where, everyone is in the streets running in one direction away from Godzilla, that's what New York had become. The streets of Manhattan, every avenue was people streaming up the streets, walking up the streets, because all the transportation had been shut down. And I'm like, what the heck has really happened? And I looked down with my binoculars down the avenue to the World Trade Center, and it was gone. And there was just this wall of smoke below about Canal Street that you couldn't see past. And a lot of things happened that day. I remember there was this one woman in a black dress, walking in her high heels, streaming up the street like everybody else, and her cell phone rang, and she answered it, and she dropped to her knees sobbing. Whatever she had found out from the other end of that phone sent her dropping to her knees sobbing. And that's what New York was like at that moment, but not in Central Park. In Central Park, the rhythms of nature continued. no matter what madness man perpetrates against each other, against ourselves, nature continues. The cycles of nature continues. And I remember noticing that particularly when I looked at film later of the Twin Towers as they were burning. And as they were burning, this gull flew past. Beautiful, elegant, white, pristine gull sailed past. And I'm like, that's still happening. That's still there. We've done this horrible thing, but nature is going to go on and she's going to keep going. And I held on to that. And that was incredibly healing and helped me get through what were some very, very dark days in New York City. So I don't know if that answers your question, but as an example of the power of nature to help you transcend tragedy, help you overcome hardship, help restore you in hard times, I can't recommend it highly enough.
So I'm just taking a moment to pause and think on that. And as I'm thinking, and I'm sure many of you are thinking about the words Christian has said today, think on some questions that we can take from the audience out in the live and also on Zoom. And here is Juliet as we transition.
So I have a question on Zoom from Anne. What can white educators in heavily predominantly white schools and communities do to better serve and support students of color in their classrooms?
Good question. You would think that if you're a white teacher in a predominantly white school in a predominantly white community, there's nothing you can do. But actually, a lot of schools these days, particularly, regardless of the fact that they may be in poorer communities, they have things like teleconferencing abilities. So you could maybe have a sister school program. And in fact, Barry mentioned this idea to me when we were talking just the other day of two schools being in conversation. If you're a predominantly white school with a predominantly white teacher, maybe you could be in conversation with a predominantly black school in a predominantly black neighborhood via the teleconferencing equipment. And again, a lot of these schools have that equipment, even if they're not using it, even though they're a poorer school. So if you do that, let's say your school is in Alabama and the school you're speaking to is in Detroit, you can compare notes about migration, about the birds that connect your communities. For example, a Kirtland's warbler winters in the Bahamas, but breeds up in Michigan. And it is one of the rarest songbirds in North America. So it's a very exciting bird. And you can compare notes if you've had a Kirtland warbler down in a white community down in the South as it's migrating up. And then you can tell the people in Detroit, hey, the Kirtland's warblers are coming, they're heading your way. Migration connects the whole world in ways that we can only just begin to imagine. My favorite bird is the Blackburnian warbler, a little tiny bird, smaller than a sparrow with an incredibly day-glow fiery orange throat. That bird winters in Ecuador. So we are connected because Blackburnian warblers pass through Illinois. Some of them may even breed here, I'm not sure. But we are connected via these birds to far-flung places with different people, with different needs. And so the birds can be a connector, can start conversations, can help us, reach out to each other. So that's one suggestion.
This is a question, again from Zoom, from Don. There has been a focus the past decade or so in getting people connected to nature. It has been done with the idea that nature is good for us in many ways. With the pandemic of the past year, more people have been getting outside. How do you make the leap with these people not to just be users, hobbyists, or such of nature, but become people who become involved with issues such as clean water, endangered species, and others becoming activists in local as well as national issues?
It's a great question. I think it will happen organically. I think that once people get outside and start appreciating these things and seeing these things, even if it's initially as simply as a user of, oh, well, this makes me feel better. Well, guess what? If this makes you feel better, and then maybe it's suddenly going to be gone because someone's going to build a dam or someone's going to pour some chemicals into it, you have a personal stake in protecting that. And it's not a big leap to go from, you know, sort of the very specific local area I use that I appreciate to, oh, there are other areas like that in other parts of the country that need to be protected. I get that now. So I think it happens organically. I think it'll happen naturally. I certainly hope so. I don't know if there's anything we can do to foster it. Nothing comes to mind immediately. Again, I don't see how it doesn't happen if people are out there appreciating nature. That they don't, to some extent, you know, become activists. Not everyone has the activist gene in them. Not everyone has the activist gene in them, but hopefully, to some extent, they'll become activists on these issues. And I will say, you know, in Central Park, I have seen an exponential increase in the number of birders out there from last year to this year. It is unbelievable how many more people have taken up birding. So many people I would run into and I'm like, oh, I haven't seen you in the park before. You know, again, trying to be welcoming, the way we make a point of that in Central Park. I'm like, oh, I haven't seen you in the park before. And they're like, oh yeah, I just started birding in the last year or the last year and a half. So many times I heard that story this spring and it's great.
We'll get you to.
I was just wondering how many binoculars you were able to give out today.
What?
I was just wondering how many binoculars you were able to give out today.
Want to talk about that a little bit?
I can talk about it. I guess I should be on camera. We donated 18 binoculars to the center, so they're going to stay here. Thank you. And all the kids received a T-shirt that said "Celebrate Diversity" with 3 bird species on there that are pretty influential birds in a way, or a good identity. So we have a red-winged blackbird. He's going to show a shirt. Okay, let's show the audience the shirt. Celebrate diversity. So we chose the red-winged blackbird, which maybe Christian can talk about why we put that for Christian. A painted bunting and a female northern cardinal, because we tend to see male birds photographed more than female birds. And I wanted a very fabulous brown female on the shirt. So I want to thank Elliott Graphics. So they took the idea from my head and put it on the shirt. So I thank them immensely for getting these shirts, and the kids all received that. So even though the binoculars are for the center, the kids also, and teens, were able to receive, and the staff at Boys and Girls Club.
You mentioned the binoculars at the library. We were talking about a barrier to birding. The library does have binoculars.
So the library, Freeport Public Library, has binoculars as well. And the goal for that was really to allow people who may not have the opportunity to purchase them themselves, they can check out a STEM kit. And the library is full of STEM kits. So as a biology teacher, I'm going to keep promoting that as well. So you can check out a microscope and a telescope, but go about birding. There's a bird guide. There's an audio bird identifier. So you can play the button and it will identify a bird for you, and the binoculars. And I want to say, I think there's 3 kits. So they can be checked out anytime. Any more from the audience? Okay.
I think I know this person.
All right. Hey, everyone. I have a lot of friends who are members of the Chicagoan diaspora. In the inner city, where you just have concrete walls, you have cracked concrete, trash on the side. How do we plant the seeds in the people who are living in those conditions that their environment is worth improving, saving, and just caring for the environment in general? Because I don't think it's an intentional ignorance, but you're not going to really care a lot about these endangered species if you don't see them every day. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
You need this.
I was just thinking, thank God that microphone has to travel back to me with a little time for me to compose my thoughts on the issue. No, that's a really good question. And that's basically what I'm talking about, is that if we do not engage, these urban communities because we are increasingly an urban society, not agrarian. If we don't engage urban communities in nature and in birding, then we're not going to have the support, just as you mentioned. Usually, there is some sort of park. Even if you're in that kind of environment, there is a park nearby. And there will always be some kind of birds in that park. It won't be endangered species. It doesn't have to be endangered species, but you want to get people out into those parks and appreciating those parks, protecting them, feeling personally attached to them, improving them, because that creates the understanding of nature and of its importance. And I will say, even in a concrete jungle, I live in one. I live in Manhattan's East Village. And it is as urban as it gets, though fortunately the East Village is studded with some pocket parks. So like I said, there's almost always a park somewhere. But even in my neighborhood, I'm walking down the street and I hear click, 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 and my head shoots up, because it means there's an American kestrel flying overhead, our smallest falcon, that's feasting on the mice that infest that neighborhood. I have been up on my roof and I have seen a red-tailed hawk, one roof over, that's feasting on the rats and the pigeons that are in all our neighborhoods when we're living in that kind of urban area. And so there's a red-tailed hawk sitting one roof over, which is a big, magnificent bird. And then I hear click, 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 and it's one of those kestrels swooping down, dive bombing the red-tailed hawk, because that kestrel is pissed off that red-tailed hawk is in its territory. So the kestrel is attacking it, and there's a second kestrel also attacking it. They're taking turns, so it's like a tag team match. So one kestrel takes a run, then the next kestrel takes a run, and then suddenly the kestrels stop. And I'm like, okay, and they're sitting on the sidelines. And then I hear, a peregrine falcon, the fastest animal on the planet, and as big as a crow, and a big bird of prey comes swooping down, and it starts strafing the red tail. And the kestrels are like, I'm sitting this out. I'm sitting on the sidelines now. And then another peregrine comes in. And this is in the middle of Manhattan, the busy concrete sea. And I'm up on my roof. I'm like, bring me the popcorn. This is worth seeing. So, there is always something going on. I don't care what neighborhood you're in, there are always birds. So we just got to get people out there and appreciating them and looking at them.
More chat. We have a question from Jeff on Zoom. You mentioned you were doing work with children in New York City. What were you doing with the children there? Maybe can generate ideas for us in Freeport.
Sure, absolutely. There is a program started by someone actually who now lives here in Illinois, not far from here. But she started a program called For the Birds in New York when she was living in New York, and she roped me into it because I was volunteering with kids, but not birds, not about birds. And she got me in, and we ended up teaching side by side for like 5 years in this program that went into the schools and taught kids them a basic understanding. This thing is going in and out. Basic understanding of birds and birding and the outdoors, and got them outside. And that was a classroom program. And that's still going on, and it's been going on for years, and it would run for, half a year or maybe even the entire school year. But then after that, there was nothing. So if a kid was interested, if that program sparked their interest, there was no follow-up. So what I did was I went to New York City Audubon and I said, hey, you know what we could do? We could start an after-school club, something that's for extracurricular for the students who are really interested about birds after doing this other program, and it lets them keep coming back year after year after year to continue to foster that appreciation and continue to explore birding. And so we started that program up. We've been running it in a school in the Bronx for a couple of years, and then the pandemic came and after-school programs got shut down. But what New York City Audubon did was they created a virtual version of it, and that's been running this past spring is the virtual version. I have no idea if we'll be back in the classroom come the fall, but that's the hope. So as far as suggestions for here in Illinois, you can have an in-school program, you can have an after-school program. Those are just two options of what you can do here in terms of getting kids involved.
We'll do one more Zoom and then we'll do some audience in here and we'll go back and forth. This is from our local Freeport Park District. This is a question from Karen. How can our park district help to make more people of color feel more accepted and welcome throughout the park district?
That's a hard one for me to answer, and I'd rather throw it to some of the people, some of the Black and brown people in this audience, because I don't live here. I don't know necessarily what the issues are in the parks in this community. There may be some very specific things going on here, and there's no way that I can swoop in for 48 hours and know what those are. So I would love for some of the Black folk here to take that question up and answer it, or maybe if this person has an email address they're willing to give out, so that people can formulate an answer and then email this person with, what, this is what I've experienced in the parks that made me uncomfortable or that presented a difficulty in terms of participation. And I think that's a better answer than me, trying to pontificate from here as a stranger.
Thank you. Okay, unfortunately, your incident in Central Park is not uncommon. So can you share information about it and what people can do to stop incidents like that after your personal experience? Thank you.
Reach 10,000 steps today.
Record, record, record. I just happened to be recording. I had so many people say to me, oh, thank goodness you decided to record what she was doing. I had no idea she was gonna take it racial. I was recording because her dog was off the leash, and I was gonna keep recording until her dog was on the leash. Then she made it racial, and so I had the whole thing on video. But they just gave out a Pulitzer to, and I'm going to blank on her name, and I had it on the tip of my tongue just a little while ago, but to the young teenager who recorded the murder of George Floyd. All the incidences that have been brought to light, almost all of them, it's been because someone has been recording. When Ahmaud Arbery was chased down the streets because he was jogging while Black and killed by two white guys. When the police initially got there, the white police, who were friendly with the two white guys, said, oh yeah, this is clearly an incident of self-defense. And then the video came out, and suddenly there was a whole lot of backtracking. So record, record, record. We all have these in our pockets now. Use them.
So my wife asked me a question. Which means she wants me to ask you a question. She wants to know, how do you tell between a male and a female bird?
Looking forward to the answer.
Okay, so it depends on the kind of bird. There are some birds like blue jays where the males and the females look essentially identical, in which case we don't have a hope or a prayer of telling them apart just by looking at them. There are other birds where there's what they call sexual dimorphism. The males and the females look different. And then it's fairly easy to look at them and tell them apart. And the reason why they look different is that in those species, the male is usually brightly colored. Go males. They're good-looking birds with all these bright colors and elaborate plumages, and they look great. And the females are kind of drab, kind of plain. Now, there's a reason for that. There's a reason for that. It's because what in those species do the females do that the males don't? The females have to sit on the nest and brood the eggs. And if she's all flashy and incredible colors, predators will find her when she's vulnerable, sitting there on that nest, brooding those eggs. So she has to be what we call cryptically colored. She's colored so that she camouflages in, so that she cannot be easily seen. So that's the reason why in some species you have, incredibly bright, colorful males who sing out, Louise, with these incredible songs, and then you've got the females who don't sing and who are cryptically colored, who are colored so that they blend in. And then there are other species where the male and the female look exactly the same, and then you don't have a prayer of telling them apart.
First of all, thank you for coming to Freeport. You are a national treasure, and I hope your influence explodes. My question is a bird question. I'm a late blooming birder. My dad loved fishing, and he took us kids fishing with him. And he pointed out the herons and the owls and things such as that. But the birds that we all loved the most were Baltimore Orioles. So I went my entire life just seeing one once in a while and being very excited about it. But in the last couple of years, I found out that in their migration, wherever they come from and wherever they go, you can entice them with oranges and grape jelly. And so my question is, in their name, Baltimore Oriole, is the Baltimore something significant?
Excellent question. And it will go to the heart of how complicated some of these bird names are. So you got two parts to that name, Baltimore and Oriole. Let's take the Baltimore first. A lot of people think, oh, it's called the Baltimore Oriole because they found them or they find them a lot in Baltimore. Nope. It's called the Baltimore Oriole because over in England, there was some guy named Lord Baltimore, and on his coat of arms of his shield, it was black and orange. So when the European settlers came over here and they saw, or the English settlers to be more specific, came over here and they saw that black and orange bird, they're like, oh, it's just like the colors of Lord Baltimore. We'll call this the Baltimore Oriole. Now, then there's the second part of the name, the Oriole. And this happens over and over with bird names here in the Americas. There's a bird over in Europe called the Oriole already that vaguely resembles a bird that the settlers came over here to the New World and saw. Totally unrelated. These birds have no family relationship at all, but it looked vaguely like it, so they called it the same thing. So if you go over to the Old World, they have these things called orioles, which are completely different and a totally separate family from you come over here and we have orioles, but because they vaguely resembled the orioles over in the Old World, they called these birds orioles as well. So that's how you end up with the name Baltimore Oriole, or else you're playing baseball.
Thank you. I too would like to thank you for coming to Freeport. This is an awesome experience for us, and I'm sure that we're going to take this and share it with others. I have a question and a comment. My question is very simple. Where does one begin with bird watching? Is it watch a YouTube video, 101? Do you get a book? And what are you looking for when you go out? I mean, you see birds all the time. Do you try to write down what you see? Do you take pictures? What are you doing? Okay, that's the question. My comment is this. Your incident, as horrific as it was, has catapulted you into prominence. I didn't know you before that incident. I applaud you for using your birding as the platform to talk about race. This is an opportunity for all of us to have conversations about race. Yes, we have, well, some of you have birding in common. I don't yet. But I mean, it's birding that brought us all together. And so I just think that's wonderful that you're using that now to make people more comfortable having these kinds of discussions about the different species and the different ways that we relate or we don't relate to one another. So I do applaud you for that. Thank you very much.
Excellent question. I was birding in Kenya, which was amazing. And I made a point, because you go to Kenya and there's a lot of British expats, who are willing to, who dominate the birding field, but I made a point of seeking out the Black group, the native Kenyans who were doing it. And this guy was an ornithology student, and he was amazing, and he knew his birds cold. And I was there, struggling a little bit because these are new birds to me, and his words to me were, or his phrase to me, and I will use it for you. And when you say, how do you get started? ATD, attention to detail. So that's the important thing. Yes, you see birds all the time. Now you want to start to look at them with new eyes. You want to give as much attention to detail as you can. And you're looking for things called field marks. Now, what do we mean by field marks? We mean color, pattern, habitat, what sounds they make, the shape of the bird, the size of the bird. All of these things you want to know. And all of these things will help you figure out what the bird is. And then also behavior. What is the bird doing? But they will not only help you figure out what the bird is, they'll give you a new appreciation for the bird, because you'll start to see new things about it. So ATD, attention to detail. You want to look for those field marks. You don't have to write them down, though it may help, but you want to make a little mental note of what you're seeing. It was black on the head, and it had orange on the body, but the wings were black with some white stripes on them. That kind of attention to detail. You start those things, and then you'll be able to start to figure out what you're seeing, and you'll appreciate the bird more. And that's how you start birding. It has nothing to do with YouTube videos. It just means going out there and observing. That's all it takes. Observing with your naked eye or observing with binoculars. And as far as everything else you said, thank you. It was very generous. They made the mistake of sticking microphones in my face. And I was like, if you're going to put a microphone in my face, I'm going to use it to say what I think needs to be said. So,
This question is on Zoom from Jennifer. How did you learn to keep cool under pressure? What's going on in your head during stressful times?
Star Trek. I grew up in a household where Star Trek was the thing. We watched it as a family. We were a crazy science fiction family, and Star Trek was intelligent science fiction that looked ahead to a utopia where race and ethnicity and what country you came from, none of it mattered. And all of us were pulling together in this utopian future to explore space and the outer reaches of the galaxy. And this is the household I grew up in, so Star Trek was important. And the one character who was it for me in Star Trek was Mr. Spock. And his emotions were always under lock and key. And I think part of it was the fact that I grew up gay. I grew up knowing from the age of 5 years old, I knew that I was gay. I knew what the story was. I knew it also enough to keep my mouth shut. Because back in those days, that's the kind of thing that could get you harmed. But that made it all the more important that I know how to control my emotions, that I keep myself reined in, because I could not let anyone even suspect what was going on inside me. So Mr. Spock was my hero, even to the point that I learned, because of Mr. Spock, how to do this. I stood in front of the mirror with my finger, pushing that eyebrow up, trying to move whatever was there until I mastered how to do that. And now I use it to intimidate my nieces and nephew. When they were little kids, they were doing something out of control, and I would just look over and I'd go, and it would stop. But anyway, so that's how did I keep so calm and cool? And I've heard that a lot. It's because I was like, I've sort of, that's my motto is, emotion, no, I'm not going to act out of emotion. I'm going to be like Mr. Spock. I'm going to keep calm and cool, and I'm going to make the rational choice. And then sort of the motto that I try to live by, that sometimes I fail, sometimes I'm good at it, is the person who remains calm wins. And I think that's more true now than ever in an era where we're constantly being watched and everything is recorded. And, someone catches this video of you losing your control and going all crazy, and that blows up YouTube, and that's it, you're done. So, the person who remains calm wins.
What do you do when you're not birding?
What do I do when I'm not birding? I'm going to the movies a lot. We did it last night at the Lido. I love to go to movies. It doesn't even have to be a good movie. I just love the experience of losing myself in the dark and losing myself into somebody else's reality for an hour and a half to 2 hours and sit there, and just the smell of the popcorn is enough to transport me someplace else. So I love going to the movies in a movie theater. What else do I love to do? I love chocolate. I will inhale chocolate, and I have to keep myself on a tight leash so that this waistline, so I can keep my girlish figure. And now, I got to control the chocolate. So.
Say something about your book too.
I just have a really simple question. First, I want to say I appreciate you so much being here, and your insight and everything you've said has been incredibly informative, and I just appreciate that. My question is, I know there was a painted budding in Manhattan, in Central Park a few years ago. I was just wondering if you happened to see it.
Okay, so a little background. For those who don't know, a painted bunting is basically a sparrow, essentially. But it is a sparrow that has been subjected to a technicolor splatter of paint. It is ruby red and deep blue and bright green, all sort of splattered all over the bird in this particular pattern. It is incredibly beautiful, but it's also a bird of the coastal South. So you'll find it in coastal regions of Georgia and the Carolinas, but you won't find it in Central Park or in New York. It wasn't Central Park that the bird showed up in, it was Prospect Park in Brooklyn. And when word got out, I jumped on my bike and I pedaled furiously with my binoculars. And sure enough, there was a painted bunting that somehow had gotten lost in all of its travels and ended up in Prospect Park in Brooklyn. And we were all thrilled because that is a very rare sighting for New York. It was nothing compared to what would happen a few years later. And I was in my office, it was spring migration, and my phone was going off all day with, oh, I saw a common yellowthroat. I'm like, common yellowthroat is common. Stop buzzing my phone with an alert that says you saw a common. So finally it was too much and I had to turn my phone off because I was at the office. I was supposed to be getting work done. Thank God I worked a little bit late and was still at the office. And I turned my phone back on finally at the end of the day, and I said, all right, let me turn it back on, see if anybody's seen anything. And an ornithology professor, friend of mine, who had used to bird Central Park, but had moved up to Connecticut for his job, and he sent me a text that said, oh, so you're gonna go see the Kirtland's warbler? And I'm like, very funny. Kirtland's warbler, I mentioned it before, breeds in this much of Michigan. There are 6,000 individuals in the entire planet, and they all breed in this much of Michigan, and that's it. If you want to see a Kirtland's warbler, you got to go to this much of Michigan to see one. They winter in the Bahamas, and they make their way between the two places and, oops, generally go unnoticed as they do, except this once. One of them took a long right turn, and instead of going directly from the Bahamas to Michigan, it ended up in Central Park. The first time in recorded history that a Kirtland's warbler had ended up in Central Park. And I'm looking at my phone, like, Kirtland's warbler, ha, 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 ha. And then I look at the chain of messages that I'd missed because I turned off my phone, and I just said, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I ran out of the office with my binoculars, and people in the office thought someone in my family had died. I ran because there was no easy subway to get there. I ran from my office all the way to Central Park. I'm huffing and puffing. I immediately looked for it, not the bird, but what I knew would be this huge mass of birders around the bird. And I come running up, and this friend of mine, Mike, came over and he goes, relax, calm down, it's still here. And I went over there and I saw the Kirtland's warbler, and we lost our minds. Literally, every birder in the metro, every birder in the metro New York region lost their minds over that bird. And it's not just a matter of a needle in a haystack, because Central Park is acres. This one little tiny bird, smaller than a sparrow, showed up in all those acres. Somebody not only found it, but had the presence of mind, the birding skill to know what they were looking at and realize, yeah, this is a Kirtland's warbler, and to get the word out to the rest of us. So that was a once in a lifetime thing. It was stuck around for 3 days. And I know some people who showed up, who were out of town and showed up on the 4th day, and they are still crying and kicking themselves.
All right, this is just a final comment from Judith on Zoom. Hi, Christian. I am an artist with a piece for, start over. Hi, Christian. I am an artist with a piece in the For the Birds exhibition. I appreciate that you came to talk about birding, etc., in conjunction with our show. Your stories are interesting and inspiring, especially how your parents engendered a love of nature and knowledge in you. I love birds and put them in nearly all of my work. I watch them, but not in any disciplined way. I'm going to get out there with my opera glasses and get serious.
Excellent. Who was that?
Judith Joseph.
Oh, excellent. Oh, and I want to circle back to that comment that came in from Zoom that said, you know, what can we do in our parks to make them more welcoming? And I'm quite serious about the fact that if there's an email that that person is willing to give, and if there are people here who are willing to share their experiences and give feedback to that person who asked that question, I think that would be incredibly valuable for this community. So, yeah.
We're almost done. But they can't see you.
So, okay, one more thing. You are working on a book right now, right?
But Barry's like kicking me. He's like, mention your book, mention your book. Yes, I'm writing a memoir for Random House, and it's going to include actually some of the things I talked about tonight, but a lot of other things as well. There's no set date for it to be published, principally because I'm still writing it, and I'm here instead of writing it at this moment. But you know, that's okay. That's what's supposed to happen sometimes, not all the time, or else my publishers will be very angry with me. But yes, it's a book that will be called Better Living Through Birding, and it should be coming up sometime soon. So keep your eyes and ears open for that. And I want to encourage all you guys to go to the Freeport Art Museum, see the exhibits, see especially Alice Hargrave's exhibit. That room is awesome. Yes, no, please go check it out. And and I want to give a tip of the hat to you, Barry. and to the Freeport Art Museum and to all your collaborators, because this is a small community. And you guys have pulled off something quite amazing in coordinating all of this, not just culturally and artistically, but also socially to get, and hopefully on an ongoing basis, a continued engagement of the community, all parts of the community, to bring an awareness and a focus on birds and on racial issues. And I think that's fabulous.
Yes, thank you, thank you. I appreciate having you here so much. Thank you so much, Christian. We have one more thing to take care of here. Our dear Joy Sellers organized a raffle with some gifts for you to take home. Come on, who's Sanae? Come on, listen, you know what they are, so you got to come up here and describe them. Come on, and we're gonna pull tickets. All right.
Okay.
Come on.
All right. Well,
Here.
we're gonna
You want me
need
to do this?
sure, I can
Here,
run things.
you pull out the, okay, first ticket is for what? What do we have?
Two bird wall hangings. We have
All organized by Joy. Thank you so much. So pull out a ticket and Sanaya, you want to read it? Let's have some fun.
All right, so 821496. All right, the next one, 821504.
Live life in full bloom.
821523.
There you go. And another live life in full bloom. We want several people to do that tonight.
821522.
There you go. One more.
821508.
One more?
No.
Oh, okay.
821530. Eight.
Are we doing this?
Yeah.
These two?
Yep, and
this
then
is
after, just those two.
This,
Yep.
this and this. Those go together?
Nope, the big one's last.
Okay. Welcome to paradise.
821518.
This one we need to say a few words about, right? Yes.
We just want to thank Craig Deininger at Deininger Floral for donating this as one of our gifts.
Eight, 21509.
You were here all the way from Mineral Point, right? Okay. Thank you, that's it, right? Well, anyway, thank you so much for coming this evening. Yes, do stop by the museum and take in Monday monologues from Winneshiek Playhouse and visit the library. They have binoculars there too, all right? I guess good night, everyone.